What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Jonas, and with me, as always, is Mr. Raman Singh. Raman, what's good today, buddy?
Man, I gotta tell you something. So yesterday I went in my closet and I had these like older dress pants that I hadn't worn in a while,
Oh,
and I put them on. I couldn't even close the button on those, man. Like it was so bad. And then now I tell my wife, I'm like, man, like stop cooking that good. Like stop eating all this food. Like she'll go on like TikTok and like she's like, dude, okay, I so my wife is Romanian, right? She made butter chicken, and it was actually pretty damn good. Because she
really?
followed like the recipe and whatnot. Like she got on TikTok, watched videos and things like that. And I mean, and I can see the after effect. Like maybe even this shirt is looking a little tight. I feel like, you know.
I think you look great.
Oh, thank you,
I
thank you.
think you look great, but
I'm in a predicament whether I should buy new clothes or whether I should just keep what I have and like cut my weight down.
not for me. I refuse to buy new clothes because I will not admit it. But there are people who are stronger than me that are like, yeah, this ain't changing. I'm buying new clothes. I'm like, I will go sit in a sauna for 18 hours before I buy new clothes. Uh, but
Oh man.
with that being said, you and I were talking about this. Obviously, we're kind of just getting started for the July season. People are starting to get started with their studies, and the question always comes up is when I meet with any student, how are you studying? And they always come back to say, well, I do some reading and then I do a practice quiz, or I'll watch a video and then I do a practice quiz. Okay, and so I'll say, okay, what else besides the Q bank are you using to study? And they say, well, that is my main mode of study. So my question for you is is doing practice questions enough, or does it give us a false sense of confidence?
You want the long answer or the short answer?
Go with the midway answer.
Midway. So the thing is, I look at practice questions, or whenever I build a tailored study plan for my students, I look at the practice questions as more like a a game, like an actual like. So I played baseball in high school.
You played baseball?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Oh,
Shortstop and center field. Come on, man. Come on, let's go.
I didn't,
My
I didn't,
nickname
I
was
didn't
Crick.
see you. I didn't see you as a baseball player. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I grew up in India playing cricket, right?
That I
So
see,
yeah, exactly. So
but
when
it
I moved
is baseball in a way.
right. And it was like similar, and I wanted to like get into sports, so I played baseball. They actually nicknamed me Cricket because of that, because I had like a cricket swing. But no, so I remember like, coach would make us do, drills every single day, like run around the field, he'll hit the ball, you'll catch it, whatever is grounders, pop flies. But thing is, after like a certain number of days of practice, we'll actually have like a scrimmage type of like a game, basically, right? Between all the players. And the thing is, that's what I look at practice exams as, right? It's kind of like, okay, I went through all this practice and this training, let's apply. But to your point, I mean, I have met students, they're about 2 months away from the exam, maybe even longer, and they're like, yeah, I'm doing 100 questions a day. It's just kind of like, wait, let's optimize that a little bit further. But so that is my mid answer is I'd say the short answer is no, it is not enough, and you have to have a better plan with it.
I always say that doing tests are they measures where you are. It tells you what if your studying is working.
Yep.
And the thing is, it's like I can't tell if my studying is working if the only thing that I'm doing is taking tests. It's
Right.
like if I was training for a marathon and the only way that I trained was to run a marathon. Well, how am I going to get better at other stuff? If
Right.
the only thing that I do is train, like, how can I know if my training is working if my training is running 26 miles every day?
And I think with and some might say, well, that's how I would train for a marathon. But let's just say if you're training for a marathon, it's a flat terrain, it's just flat road, and that's what you're training for. But in reality, the actual marathon happens to have hills. Oh boy. You trained for a marathon.
Yeah, yeah,
You did exactly what you should. You told me was like, I'm gonna train for a marathon. I'm gonna run a marathon, every day or every week, whatever it is. But what changed? The field changed.
yeah. And think about the mental blow, not just the
Hmm.
physical blow, but the mental blow that is where you prepare in one way and then it ends up being another. And I kind of think about it as like, you know, my mom is a Egyptian woman who was born in the 1950s in Egypt. And every woman of her generation was bred to be at home and raise children and cook. And she's been cooking every day for her entire life. That woman understands food and she loves doing it. And watching my mom cook is it's honestly a pleasure. Like she just understands ingredients and the way she handles the knife and it doesn't I mean you could put this woman in any kitchen anywhere and with half a kitchen utensil and three ingredients she'll figure out a meal. I'm like,
Man,
that is a cook, right?
yeah,
That is somebody who understands food. And even if a recipe is like, put salt in now, she's like, no, it's gonna make it bitter if I do it now. And I'm like, wow, that's beautiful to watch. My oldest sister, on the other hand, she is a recipe lady. She's like sitting there following it, and like if it doesn't look like it does in the picture, she panics, she freaks out. And if the recipe calls for two and she's got to adjust it to three. She doesn't even know where to begin. And I think that's what just doing practice questions does. If all I do is follow the steps of the recipe and I never have to do any thinking on my own, I get really good at following steps.
yeah,
Just like any if you're just doing practice questions, you get really good at the clues. I start associating certain things, I get in the groove of the question. But the second that anything changes, if they go an inch deeper, they turn left instead of right, they turn right instead of left, they hit the stop, just like you said, once the terrain changes, I'm screwed because that's not what I prepared for.
right. And it's funny you say that, Joe. I mean, and I'm sure you probably have a similar experience. Retakers that I've met in the past, they would be scoring so well with their practice exams, whether it's Dalton, Danko, Kaplan, Zahn, and they'll say like, "But I was doing so well on these practice tests, and I failed the test." And to your point, it's because you were following a specific recipe without really understanding. Like, how did you say it? Like you said, like how the spices work. I forget how
Yeah.
you said it, but you said it really well.
No, I was just like how food interacts with each other.
Yes, and in this case, in this concept, the food interaction with each other is kind of like understanding the topics. Like yeah, you might be taking all these retirement planning questions, and you're like, oh yeah, this is great. But the CFP exam, as you know it, they're gonna tell you, hey, this is the type of meal we're looking for, but it's like a infusion of Indo-Chinese. Like if you
Yeah,
know how to make only
exactly.
Indian food, they're gonna ask you, and Chinese food separately. Like if you say like, well, you know what, like I know how to make chow mein, and I know how to make butter chicken separately. The
Right.
CFP exam might say, okay, make us the Indo-Chinese version of butter chicken chow mein.
It's so true because, again, I know how to do retirement questions. I know how to do tax questions, but don't you dare mix them because
Don't bring them
do
together.
not bring them together because then I'm like screwed. And that's the thing is that if you get really good at being robotic about taking practice questions, the thing is the CFP will shake you down so
Yeah.
quickly because they're gonna continually change it. And again, like the one thing about if you're using any question bank, it has a certain cadence to it.
Mhm.
The way that they write the questions, and any good test bank will have a way of saying, this is the way that we do these types of questions, and then we mix it up together, and you almost need chaos to prepare
Yeah.
and be able to conduct yourself in that chaos and start putting it all together because like a good chef, like they'll go and it, like a really good chef, they'll go, be really good in this? sage. And you're like, sage. And then they put it in, and you're like, oh, sage. Yeah. Yeah. Because they understand those flavor combinations that work well together, that play off, that give it a nice flavor. And it's your job to be kind of like a chef when you're putting these things together to understand the combinations of things. You can't just be really good at slicing vegetables.
Right.
You can't be just really good at boiling food or saute. Remember, the CFP is a generalist exam. You got to be pretty good at every one of those items. You're not
Right.
just a specialist in one thing. And so, being, if you're memorizing, it's like, it's like saying, Joe, can you do a tax return? I'm like, if I have QuickBooks, of course I can. They ask me the questions, but I don't know what I'm really inputting. I'm just really good at inputting. Here's your income. Look at your W 2, box 4A. Cool. Put it in. Don't be that guy.
Right. No, 100%. I feel like when it comes to the exam, if we just focus on practice questions, we're preparing ourselves to be better at our respective carriers' exam.
Mm,
That may not translate into us understanding how the CFP exam is going to be laid out. Like I tell students, and I'm not trying to say like I know more, and I tell my students like you should know more than I do at every single time. As a student, you should know more than your tutor because you're studying for this test every single time, or every single day. But I do tell them that when a question is presented to me, I don't care who wrote the question. What I know is that if I have a CFP exam question in front of me, whether it's the CFP board itself, whether it's Danko, Dalton, Zahn, Nissim Tutoring, I am dissecting the question in a way, like you said, a chef who understands it. It's kind of like, oh, like, okay, I see where this is going. I know exactly how this is laid out, so I can deliver. And most people, what they end up doing is they'll end up understanding their platform's questions so well, they'll start, you know, doing so well on the exams as well. They're like, I'm retaking it, retaking it, retaking it, and then boom, I'm scoring in my 70s, 80s, and 90s. Did you truly understand the application of questions and how to really identify what the questions are asking, where the key points are? There ain't no tricks. You just have to identify what was the key element in the question that changed the answer from B to C or C to D.
mm.
And usually it's like one or two words that changes the whole thing.
Yeah. And it, what if they reverse the order?
Yeah.
And like the thing is like, I almost think about it like a really good workout, right? Like if I just rehearse one workout, I'm gonna get better at that workout, right?
Hmm.
So if like the workout is do a 1 mile run and then do 100 push-ups and then do a 1 mile run, and I keep rehearsing that, I get really good at it. But then I'm no longer nimble to other workouts because what if the workout was run 100, do 100 push-ups and then run 2 miles? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Right? Even though it's the same amount of work, theoretically, now I might be more fatigued, I might be less fatigued, and now I'm completely thrown off because you've changed the workout. And that's what the CFP does all the time is they may put things in different order, and now because it's not done in that specific order in that specific way, you can't do it. And I think that's one of the things that you get shortchanged on when you're just
Hmm.
doing practice questions is you lose context.
Yeah.
You lose the concept in it because you might learn one iteration or one application of the concept, but as you know, there's multiple ways that we can, again, we write questions. We as test writers try to test things from several different ways, right? Take something as simple as like a tax loss carry forward. What happens if there is a carry forward from the previous year? But all you've rehearsed is I take $3,000 off this year and then I carry the rest forward. Oh shit, you didn't tell me that there was a loss from the previous year.
There we go.
What do
Yeah.
I do now? And so again, you become good at one iteration, you become robotic. I know what to do when I see this. But then when things changed, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah. And the exam is going to change things up for you. That's the key. Go don't predictability actually helps us be very comfortable, but understand the fact that the exam's not going to be predictable. So don't go in with that fact that there's going to be predictability on the questions that you've already taken. Have the predictability of like knowing your material. Be like, yeah, I know my material. That way you could apply into the exam questions. Because at the end of the day, you know, it's gonna save you. I mean, I'll give you a quick little analogy. I know our time's running up, but back to the baseball thing I mentioned. I remember I would watch the pitching machine throw a curveball my way. And I would get so used to like a curveball coming my way through the pitching machine. I'm like, I know exactly how that ball is coming because this is the machine. But guess what? Game day, when I would have this pitcher in front of me, he might be a lefty, right? If he's a lefty curveball pitcher, I I'm not prepared for that. And guess what? I'm gonna strike out. So keeping that in mind is that be predictable with knowing your material, but don't be predictable with I'm thinking that, oh, like this is how the exam is going to be because that's what I studied for my practice exams.
It's a great analogy, and we can draw 10,000 of those analogies where, like, again, like, a lot of us are very we can be very good at memorizing steps, but you have to understand the context of those steps so you know what happens when something changes. And
Mhm.
that's the difference between an amateur and a pro, right? And we see it in every field. Like, again, if you went and got your oil changed, and somebody knows I do this, I pull the plug, and that. Well, what happens if it looks a little bit different? What if it's and if you're really used to working on American cars, what happens when a European car comes in?
Yeah,
And the mechanic that's a pro goes, yeah, it's still all the same function, but it's going to be in a little bit of a different place. So instead of draining this way, it goes this way. Instead of happening
right,
this way, it happens. But it's ultimately the same underlying concept with slightly different application. And that's the difference between passing this exam and failing this exam is that if you don't understand those iterations, you're just somebody who memorized a bunch of ways to do a practice question.
right,
And in the retirement planning question or the retirement contribution question is a great example of that. I remember you said to me, it's like, man, you wrote these questions aggressive. And I remember going say to you, well, you have no idea what we're getting on the exam because if you just memorize the Dalton or the Danko or the Biff or any of them, the way they lay it out in 4 steps, and it's an incredibly effective way of doing it. What happens when the nuance changes?
hmm,
What if they want to leave money at the end? What if inflation changes in that time period? What if anything of those things change? Can you handle the changes?
right,
If you can't handle the changes, then you're not going to be able to handle the exam. And that's kind of the crux of this exam, which is can you handle the changes?
right.
And it's gonna test you down to your core on those fundamental concepts. It's gonna make sure, hey, do you really know it?
Yeah,
So I think that's a pretty good place to stop there for today. So as always, everybody, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to Raman or myself. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.